Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm.
Well, hello everybody, and happy Tuesday night. I hope you are all doing well. I hope everybody got to tune in twice today like I did to the House Subcommittee hearing on MK Ultra. It was so interesting. I literally, when it was done, I hit repeat. House Oversight Committee got 2 watches for me today, and there will be a fourth watch of that coming up as I take notes and prepare to have Dr. John Hall on to discuss that, because it was a very, very revealing hearing, folks. A couple of great witnesses came in, gave some great information on the history of MK Ultra, on the fact, like I've said numerous times, that it never stopped. It just changed. If you're watching us on Facebook, welcome to the new MK, everybody. That's one of the things that they revealed today, was that they don't need radio means, they don't need chemicals in the water. They can do it just by tipping the way we discuss things in society. So they can control us and control the masses by just doing that. And it was very interesting and revealing to hear them say such things. So make sure to go watch that. If you're wondering where to find that, sometimes it can be a little obfuscated where to find these things. We have direct links to all of these whistleblower panels, folks. CuriousRealm.com/videos. If you go down the second playlist, you'll see past all our episodes is actually all of the declassified government panels, the moon launches, everything else that have been happening. And right there, the latest one is the task force hearing for declassification of government secrets on MK Ultra. So that was awesome. It was great. In our episode tonight, number one, next week, get ready for some great coverage from Roswell UFO Fest. We will be out there this weekend. We head out Thursday morning to go see our good friend Tom Reed and Kathleen Martin, all those guys, Don Schmidt out there. So can't wait for that. It's going to be awesome. We'll have some great coverage coming for you on July 7th. Tonight, in the second part of the episode, we are very, very happy to welcome Alan Hops. I am so excited for this. It is right in my backyard, about 4 hours up the road in Plano, Texas. We will be talking with him about the North American Cryptid Museum. Really, it's a fantastic menagerie walk-through exhibit. Very horror house style of various stories throughout cryptozoology here in North America. And we'll be talking about how attractions like this really help keep not only Americana, but the history of America alive in that side of the road show kind of way, where I don't know, personally driving from Austin to San Antonio regularly, I don't know where my life would be without seeing the snake farm. I've grown up my whole life seeing that snake farm on the side of the road. And it's so much so that there are country songs written about snake farm, stuff like that. So how do these things stay alive? They stay alive because we have museums. They stay alive because we talk about them, because we have remembrance of them. And the day that we don't do that, I can tell you right now, as a Cajun, folks, we're in big trouble. One generation is all it took for the Cajun language to disappear. So we forget things rapidly. Remember that. So stay tuned for the second part of the episode. We'll be talking with Alan Hops about the North American Cryptid Museum and the important mission that he is on to preserve this unique history of America and Americana itself. In the first part of the segment, we are very happy to welcome back to the show Suzanne Ross. We first met her at our beloved Sci Games last year. She will be on today talking about the San Diego Transcendence Retreat. This is an amazing event coming up full of all kinds of literally quantum consciousness talk, things like that. So welcome back to the show. Suzanne, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to see you again. We were together at Sci Games and had a nice chat. So it's fun to be here with you online and look forward to diving into some intriguing topics.
Will you be at Sci Games this year?
I don't think so.
That's all right.
Yeah. But
you've
lots of events.
You've been more than buried in this. You also have the Sedona Ascension Retreat. We talked about that a little bit last time you were on. We'll get into it a little bit tonight. But before we get into the events and why found these events, why start these events, and once again, I think events like this are important because much like what Alan is doing with the Cryptid Museum, it keeps the conversation alive. It keeps these things going, and it keeps it in the forefront of people's minds. The question of why, the curious part of us, and when you get into consciousness, it is a huge part of the conversation, a massive cog in the machine of para-investigation right now, Suzanne. Everything from UFO, UAP, psionic talk to like you were saying before the show, quantum consciousness, the idea of a layered reality, so to speak, where there are various levels of connection in this kind of way. How did you first come to studying this? How did you first come to be involved in the world of consciousness, Suzanne, in that kind of way?
It really started when I had a profound awakening experience on a mountaintop in the desert. And that shifted me from being a corporate executive to working in the field of health and wellness. Ultimately, I got into yoga, which led to spirituality and Buddhism and then Hinduism. And then I just wanted to know everything there was to know about even religion, just different spiritual belief systems. And I've always been very intrigued by science. My father was very much a scientist. And so I started diving into quantum physics and just trying to understand the subatomic nature of reality. Really, I was one of those people who suddenly had to know, what is the nature of reality? Who are we? And where did we come from? And why are we here? And where are we going? And what is this all made of? What really is this experience all about? And so I just was a big seeker. I still am. I still read everything I can get my hands on and watch documentaries and, of course, interconnect with all these speakers who are talking about that, and just felt compelled to have events about that.
Well, and, it's interesting because we were talking before the show. My audience is well aware, for those of you tuning in for the first time, former Catholic seminarian. And that is such a beautiful and special part of my life, only a year of my life. But still, it led me to a place, University of Dallas, where at the time anyway, the only place with a harder core curriculum was West Point. And the core curriculum was things like you had to take 9 hours of theology, 12 hours of philosophy, things like that. So you were reading things like the Upanishads, Buddhism stuff. And this was a Catholic university, man, where part of philosophy of man was reading these other documents from other faiths, reading parts of the Quran, understanding why people believe what they believe culturally, why the Upanishads happened the way they did historically, that kind of stuff. And it's fascinating because even understanding church history as opposed to just dogma, why things changed when they did, that kind of stuff is a huge part of understanding spirituality as a whole and your connection to things. I've never understood the idea of an isolationist spirituality, Suzanne. The idea of a spiritual barricade that lets nothing else in. Because it's like filtering light, it's no different. At some point, you're going to change the color white because of how much blue you've subtracted or how much red or how much green, So you begin literally shifting the way that things react next to each other because of focusing in only one frequency arena of thought in that kind of way. So yeah, the idea of learning other disciplines, the idea of being open-minded doesn't change your core discipline, doesn't change who you are as a person. It should eventually maybe shift why you believe what you believe,
Yeah, I mean, I want to have substance behind what I believe, and so I want to study, everything that I can about ancient civilizations. What did they believe? Why did they believe that? What was their cosmology? I want to know how, these ancient beliefs were started in Buddhism and Hinduism so long ago. I want to know what the Egyptians and what they believe. And even prior to that, with the Anunnaki in Mesopotamia,
Absolutely.
I'm very interested in, from the beginning, as far as history writes, to modern day, like what have we learned? What have we discovered?
Yeah.
How does science support what spiritual traditions are saying? And more and more, they're really merging and coming together and supporting one another with these ideas of multidimensional realms and parallel realities and heaven. And
the one that I bring up, I brought it up at Sci Games last year when I talked. It's normally a core part of every talk that I give. And I'll pop it up on screen. My audience is very used to seeing it. This is from Live Science. But the quantum yin-yang, this is the image that won the Nobel Peace Prize a few years ago, folks. For those of you that are listening, I will narrate it. It is in black and white and in color. You basically see a yin-yang. There's no maybe it looks like a yin-yang. If you squint your eyes and lean left, sure, I could see a yin-yang. I could force my brain to see it. It is a straight up yin-yang. The representation in Oriental philosophy of entanglement, the idea that there is good and bad in good, that we're part of everything and everything is a part of us. This won the Nobel Prize for Physics, man. This image, the idea of spooky action at a distance, the idea that we are connected, that you and I right now are connected via electron shell, Susan, despite distance, that we can influence each other in that kind of way despite distance. And that's exactly what they did in the lab and what they've done time and time again since. It wasn't just a one-off. They have proven entanglement at a distance time and time again in the lab since this. So, since that won the Nobel Prize, science has rapidly been coming to the world of consciousnness. It has rapidly been coming to the world of psionic study. It has rapidly been coming to the world of UFO, UAP, and even parapsychological. Not so much the cryptozoology that we talk about, but a lot of the parapsychological, and the idea of, is there something else? Is there, kind of like they've hypothesized with physics for years, are we suds in a tub of dimensions, where each sud is a bubble and we're connected via meniscus, where it's a gas permeable layer. We can slip through from one side to another and not burst the bubble, So it's fascinating to think about when you just start thinking about quantum physics and physics to begin with, and the idea of consciousness. Where did these things come from? For years, I have spoken of my station back here behind me. People ask me all the time, like, how do you find time to create? How do you find time to write music? And it's like, well, I have created the space to write music rapidly. Like I've created the muse. I've created a hearth for her. So when inspiration comes, I'm not wasting her time setting up a bunch of wires, like spending 45 minutes wiring something. When she comes and taps me on the shoulder and says, hey, I got something to tell you, I flip one button and I hit record and I'm off and rolling. So have you enabled yourself in that kind of way vibrationally in the universe to be able to just pick up and roll with it when it happens? Or have you created barriers of construction where when those moments and those windows open, that well, suddenly you're 2 steps behind, being ready for that moment. Like you can't ride the wave if you aren't waiting for the wave,
Yeah, after years and years, decades of learning different meditation tools and techniques, different channeling techniques, through running energy, through tapping into the field with intention. Now, at this point, on cue, I can go into a state with a particular inquiry. Let's say I was just recently searching for the theme for my Sedona Ascension Retreat. And I always do this. I go into a meditative state and I tune in to what will be the theme for this next retreat. And it's almost instantaneous that I'm able to bring that in. And so for 2027, it came through that Sedona's theme would be becoming the new human, embodying the divinity within.
Beautiful.
And I'm just as surprised as anybody else as to what the theme is going to be. So I did the same thing clearly for San Diego, and it just came in so loud and clear. Explore quantum consciousness, experience quantum love. Because this infinite field of beginningless and endless creation is sourced by love, by the one infinite creator who is the fullest expression of love creating in the universe.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting that you bring up the idea of channeling. I used to talk about it regularly, especially whenever I taught. I use it regularly here. It is regular that I'll step out because we have live guests and pre-recorded guests. And dirty secret, folks, while that pre-record guest plays out, I am audio matching the 2 guests and pumping everything out to the internet. Like in real time, right after the show with the first guest. And frequently I'll come out. The second guest will still be playing, and my wife will be like, "Oh, how was the show?" And I'll be like, "I have goosebumps, so it must have went well, but I have no idea what we talked about." And it was the same way whenever I would teach spirituality and religion for years. I had my 3 readings from the week, things like that from church. I had my rough draft points of what we were going to hit. But from there, it was like something just opened, Suzanne. Maybe a rough start, but once the sputters were gone out of something, it was like a reflex action. It was like opening a channel and it just flowed, and I never thought about it. And it's the same way that I create music. Most of the time when I am creating my electronica, things like that, I am somewhere else. I'm not here. And there have only been a few people who've been in the studio with me. My good friend Wes Goins from my band Shakuhachi Jones is one of them. He's one of the only people I've been in an original music band with, because he's one of the only people that when we did that esoteric thing in the studio, he wasn't freaked out by it. He was like, "What was that? That felt amazing." He was like, that was some of the wildest energy I've ever felt in a room. Do you think we could do that again? And I was like, I guarantee you we can do that again. The question is, are you comfortable and cool with it? Because not a lot of people are. And when you are in that mode of pure channel in that kind of way, where there is no filter, there is no barrier, what's coming through is just coming through, there is an energy that exists and that occurs that a lot of people get very, very wary with very rapidly, because it can be uncomfortable. It's a very intimate energy. And it's funny because it bears people's intimacy when they feel it. They're like, "Oh, like that's uncomfortable to me. That's way too intimate. It knows me way too well without knowing me, you know? And it's fascinating even to hear the idea that, that you are having a conference exactly about that, exactly about the idea of being able to feel that, tap into it, and use that field of energy.
And I think it's true not just for poets and writers and artists and musicians, but I believe that everyone is tapped into source
1,000%.
at all times.
Yes.
Because we're of and from that source. I believe that God, if you will, is experiencing through us as us. So we have direct access. It's up to us whether we develop techniques or tools to tune into it, whether we believe we are channeling source or have the ability to.
Yep.
But once you open to receive that and just allow it to flow, anybody can do it. And I believe I think of Steve Jobs, like he went to India right before he created the smartphone to, accelerate the technology more than had been done before. So, I'm sure that he channeled some advanced intelligence in order to come up with this.
Well, and a lot of what he learned there, honestly, Suzanne, was the biggest lesson of all, which was get the hell out of your own way. Get out of your own way and quit relying utterly on yourself. Because the day that he changed things and made it to where Steve Jobs just came up with ideas, and then everybody else, like he just surrounded himself with the people who knew how to build the idea at that point. Once he figured out how to ego-wise get out of his own way like that, the world was his oyster. Everything changed. Everything. And it's such a huge lesson, man. Huge lesson. And it's something, the concept that I used to teach typically to I taught 7th grade, 11th grade, and seniors in high school. Later on, I taught early elementary, things like that as well. But during that time, the one lesson that I taught more than anything was the idea of the kite string. The fact that if whether you're tied into the energies we're talking about or not, Suzanne, the one thing that everybody can tie into is that guttural instinct when you walk into a room. And you'll feel it. You'll feel that feeling like something just fell in the pit of your stomach, or like I said, like a kite string on the back of your belly button where something tugs. And when that happens, perk up, pay attention. Because something is happening. It might be good, it might be bad, it doesn't matter, but the universe is speaking to you. Pay attention. And if you can learn to just tune into that, just that one moment where it's literally the knock of opportunity, and it's the opportunity of this is an amazing opportunity for you, or the opportunity of this is an opportunity for real trouble. You should get out of here. And I was like, if you walk into a room with 3 or 4 of your friends and you feel that and you go, hey, man, I got to go, and they don't get that, they probably aren't your friends. You really need to consider that friendship and what it's based on, because you just told them like, no, man, I got to get out of here. There's something wrong and nobody listened to you. Do they have your best interest at heart at that point? Because you need to have your best interest at heart. And that's just it, though, is that it really is those subtle energies. It's that quiet voice, that one subtle moment during a day that you have to be tapped into. And it's fascinating that I sadly, years ago, went down a road of addiction for a while, Suzanne. And a lot of that was to quiet the empathy. I was tired of feeling it. I was tired of feeling other people and feeling the compulsion to help other people. So I disconnected myself from that energy. And like you were saying, the ability to fall into the space to be there. I lost that. And that is a muscle. That is much like meditation, anything like that. It is a muscle that has to be exercised. And I've gotten a little bit better at it doing remote viewing, things like that. That discipline has definitely brought a few things back to me. And it's interesting to see how losing that and wanting to regain that point of connection has really brought a whole new world of awareness for me. Because we really do crave that connection in a certain way, whether we admit it or not. I think everybody craves that connection with something deeper, and that understanding that they are connected with something in a larger way.
I think that's a big reason for all addictions is there's a void inside that hasn't been filled. And so trying to fill it with something, be it drugs, alcohol, sex, food, whatever that addiction is, right? But until or unless you really allow yourself to go within in stillness and engage in some type of meditative practice, you dedicate yourself to a spiritual path or a religious path, whatever you're called to, but something that just gives your life more meaning and purpose, and most importantly, connection.
Yeah.
Connection to something greater. AA calls it a higher power.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it is that makes you tune in to that greater part of who you actually are and who you are of and from.
Yeah. No, precisely. And they beautifully put it to the fact of it doesn't matter if it's a religious greater power. It could be at the tree next door that's your greater power. Doesn't matter, as long as you accept the fact that you are not the one in charge of it all, nor do you have to be. You know, and there really is. It's something that I've been kind of hipping people to over the last year or so. My wife amazingly sent me to a panic doctor a few years ago because I was having massive issues with travel for work. It had gotten to a point where like I was panicking for no good reason. Suzanne, my anxiety was just off the charts to the point where like I was like physically ill before I traveled. Sometimes it was bad. And just learning to backwalk where that comes from, and the fact that it's from loss of control. It's something that I need control over so much or care about so much has been rocked or changed in such a way that it is beyond my control. And that's scary. And that scary thing is what leads me down the road of anxiety and panic. And being able to backwalk that and understand that in that moment, the surrender to that moment is not a point of powerlessness. You know, it's surrendering to the, hey, I don't have to have control over that. That's not making myself powerless. It's actually fully empowering myself. You know, the idea of, no, I don't have to have control. It's okay. It's cool. You know, it's still going to happen whether I like it or not, you know? So yeah, there's this odd point of peace and even the idea of, if you want to lose the battle, keep arguing. Like the best way to win the battle is just to not care if you're right. Stop arguing. Stop giving it your actual energy in that tulpa and egregore kind of way, you know, where it's like, no, you've created this mountain out of a molehill, and the more energy and anger you give it, the bigger it gets, you know? So if you can learn to stop that, if you can learn to curtail that, then you can get to a much greater grounded connection with yourself and where you are with things in the world.
My journey began with an experience on a mountaintop where I was having anxiety attacks. My hair was falling out in clumps. I had depression. I was lost, and I ran to the top of a mountain and literally fell to my knees and surrendered. I just surrendered to a higher source of inspiration. And in that moment, I had an experience of being surrounded by light, and a voice came out of the light, and it gave me exactly what I needed to feel supported, loved, guided. And from that moment on, I was spontaneously healed, and I felt as if I was being guided by a force that was showing me what to do to align with my true calling, to be my highest self. And that's what began my journey. It all started with just surrendering.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, it's interesting because we don't want to surrender in that kind of way. And there's a book that I read. It's a book that I literally keep about 3 or 4 copies of on my shelf at all time. Illusions by Richard Bach. And my son read it not too long ago. He's 9 years old. It was one of the first books that he read. And it was such a proud moment when I asked him, what is that book about? And he told me about the cloud busting and, the whole idea. But it starts off with the idea of a fish who just decides to stop swimming against the stream, and how the fish becomes free because he's no longer slave to fighting the river, and that's us. That's every one of us, Suzanne, in this society. We are that fish fighting against the river when, dude, you don't have to fight against the river. Not one bit. You can live happily in the slipstream of the river. It's okay. I think it was Michael's. Go ahead. No.
I think it was Michael Singer who wrote a book, The Surrender Experiment, I believe it was called, where he had this big piece of property and he came home one day and there was a woman meditating on his property. And he was like, excuse me, but this is private property. So, you don't have my permission to be on it. So if you could please. And then the next day he came home and her and 5 friends were meditating on his property. And he's like, whoa, what's happening? I told you this is private property. You're not allowed to meditate on my property. And so then he came back the third day and there was a bunch of people. And he finally just surrendered to it and said, okay, fine. And it ended up, that it became a huge spiritual center, and spirituality became his whole life.
Yeah.
That was such a good example of
absolutely.
Get off my property.
Yeah, get out of here.
That's not happening.
Get out of here.
Finally, he just surrendered. And he stopped arguing and resisting. And just said, okay, I surrender.
Well, and, when you're talking about, especially the quantum energies, the energies that connect us. And I'm not trying to use it as a buzzword. We were talking about that before the show. Just the whole idea of quantum being used as a buzzword right now for everything. But when you are talking these quantum energies, these subtle energies that connect us at a distance, these things that connect to things like precognition, remote viewing, Akashic records, if you want to call them that, it'll change your perspective on such things when you start digging into the field of consciousness research that has gone on by people like the Monroe Institute, the Rhine Research Center. Places like that have been around, the Pear Institute, SRI, all kinds of places that have dug into these things for literally decades. And even as we started off at the beginning of the show with the federal government, to the point that the federal government looked at it, didn't just look into it, used it and utilized it for years, remote viewing. So the idea that there's even validation in that kind of way of it being researched and used for those purposes, the idea that we are connected in a different way, and even the fact that they had they had protocols in place not to remote influence people, which means that's possible. You know,
Right.
that they weren't allowed to influence people in that kind of way. They weren't allowed to like put ideas into people's heads, stuff like that. So it's fascinating to even think about that there were like ethical protocols in place with that while they were doing it, you know, that they weren't using it as a tool of war in that kind of way, but as a tool of intelligence gathering. So yeah, it's fascinating to even think about that. The fact of, wait a minute, even while the military is using this higher consciousness, they're using it with a point of higher consciousness, you know, to the point of like, do no harm. And it's interesting because, yeah, these things have been spoken about by society. These were things that got people burned at the stake at one point, you know. It's fascinating to see how far down that route goes with things, and how long the conversation of consciousness and connection in this kind of way has really been going on.
There's been so many projects over the years, projects of the government using channelers, right, to reveal galactic wisdom and knowledge and using that, right? There's been projects, not just remote viewing for spying purpose or military gain, but in Montauk, they had the boys that were Montauk boys, they called them, who were engaged in time travel experiments. I mean, the Philadelphia experiment.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's been all kinds of things, time travel, remote viewing, channeling that the government has engaged in openly, you know, to access this quantum field, to retrieve information from the field, or to send people across space-time into another parallel reality in return to tell about it. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And
it's been going on for a long time.
Well, and once again, across societies, across time, you know, these are
Right.
these are conversations that have been had for the longest time about this type of connection and what to do about it. And it's interesting because last year, before the inaugural Sci Games, I put an ad out. Just a paid ad like I do with every single show that I go to around the country and do coverage. I always do paid ads to help sell tickets, things like that. And I ended up cutting the commenting off. It was probably about a month or so after I put the ad out, Suzanne, that I saw a comment from my brother on Facebook. That the only thing I was like, oh, my brother commented on my post. I make a lot of posts. So I was like, which post did he comment on? And it was that. And the only comment he said was, this comment section is gold. And I was like, oh my God, what have people been saying about this ad? My Lord, the spiritual and religious depth that it went to, calling remote viewing demonic and satanic and things like that. Like, you know, one guy got into it pretty thick and started quoting Revelation. And I was like, wait a minute. Are you quoting the revelation of St. John of Patmos, who very well may have remote viewed the end of time?
And channeling Jesus. I mean, it's the revelation of Jesus Christ that he channeled through the revelation.
But I've had numerous people that I used to teach with who are very religious, very, very staunchly right-wing Catholic, daily mass goers, things. And whenever I share on social media, folks, just so you know, if you get a share from me for the episode, there's a little function if you're a co-host or a host where it's like, invite. And it just says like, invite 500 friends. And it randomly chooses 500 friends, man. And sometimes one of these people will be one of those friends and they will respond and be like, why did you share this with me? I have zero interest in hearing this conversation. I do not believe in things like this. And it's like, but you do. And it says so at the very beginning of the creed, every mass that you go to every day. You know, where I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, of all things seen and unseen. Like, that is the first pillar of faith. So unseen, I'm pretty sure, is more of the universe than seen. Just scientifically.
Certainly.
Just scientifically. Let's start there. So, like, if you're willing to court the fact that you are taking part in a miracle every day of transubstantiation on the altar, then you are willing to court the fantastic. You are willing to court the paranormal. If you're sorry, even the Eucharistic miracle is not normal. It's a miracle. You know, if you are following that hard line belief that it is a miracle every day, that means that you believe in the paranormal, like, hands down. You know, that's why they have people who go and investigate miracles for the church to see if that is a normal or paranormal thing that is happening. You know, even the fact of the exorcist that just lost his position in D.C. I have been giving a big tip of the hat to the church for that, because the exorcist literally publicly said all UFOs are demonic. That's a very blanket statement for someone who literally investigates the demonic. And if you're saying all as a blanket statement, that means you are no longer investigating the demonic on a case-by-case basis, demonic investigator. So, like, you've belied the fact that you are no longer fully investigating every case on a case-by-case basis. So you shouldn't be an exorcist anymore. Because you aren't doing the actual investigation that it lays out, that it says you should do. That's a dangerous statement, you know? So we have to be careful with things like that. And even yourself, like you're saying, when it comes to people that you've invited to speak, their work is vetted carefully. The things that they are saying are vetted carefully, because you don't want to just say, like we said at the beginning of the show, you don't want to just use quantum just to use quantum. You don't want to just use the term consciousness just to use it. You want to make sure that the people who are presenting, that the people who are bringing these things to the public, are doing so in a right and good fashion, not in a way to take advantage of people, not in a way to take advantage of community, or even to take advantage of people's faith or want of experience in that kind of way, Suzanne.
The way that these experiences, these presenters have had to do with near death, ET contact, hypnosis, DMT, the way that those experiences have drastically altered their life for the better is proof itself that they have accessed the field of quantum consciousness and gone beyond space-time into other parallel realities. And they want to share from their heart what they experienced there and how and why it changed their life and what the implications are for us, to give us hope, to give us faith, to bring us closer together with a sense of unity in harmony with all that is. And that's what drives me to do events like this, and why I don't just say quantum consciousness because it's a keyword, and quantum love.
Yeah.
Because I know, and these people have experienced it, and I myself have experienced it. When you really tap into that quantum field, you experience a love like you have never experienced on the earthly plane. It's indescribable. It's all consuming.
Yes.
It's pure and penetrating.
And compulsory, Suzanne. It's one of those that once you have had that realization of connection, it becomes compulsory and incumbent upon you almost. Like it's funny. The day I realized it, it was like that I was suddenly responsible for every vibration I brought into the room. Because I realized I was the source of it. It wasn't somebody else. It was me, that I was the one rippling the room in that kind of way. That my anger was exuding from me, or my perturbedness in the world around me was exuding from me and affecting others, So yeah, you learn this point of responsibility of your own energy in that kind of way.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's what the spiritual path is largely about, is self-realization and coming to the full realization, first of all, that you are of and from a divine source. And
Yes.
then you start feeling compelled to express the divinity within you and to share that feeling of divinity with others. So you become more and more aware of your thoughts, words, and actions and how they're aligning with the
Yeah.
divine will, with divine love. You'll find yourself walking in divine synchronicity and just emanating this higher vibrational frequency because you want to share the love and light with others.
Well, in truly understanding that point of what is so much of the conversation now, especially in the evangelical churches, things like that, Suzanne, it's so funny to me to see them literally using the word manifestation. And the idea of like, you can manifest these riches and you can. The problem is you have to be aligned with them to begin with. It's kind of like I used to teach my students. You can pray all day long. Believe me, I did it. You can pray all day long to pass your geometry test. You know what the universe and God wants? For you to study your friggin' geometry, dude.
I say pray and move your feet.
It wants to do you need to do your work too.
Right.
You can't just toss a stone and expect a tidal wave. That's not how that works. So you've got to be aligned to the goal that you're trying to manifest to begin with. And if that means straightening your life, getting rid of baggage, doing whatever, you got to do your work first. And in that way that so many mediums call it shadow work. That idea of no, you need to till your garden before you put seeds in the ground. You need to get rid of the weeds. Otherwise, you're just tilling over weeds and they're going to grow right back. So yeah, it's that point of self-care. It's that point of making sure that you are right and good with things before you start that work. And then, once you start that work, as long as you're aligned with it, as long as it is what the universe has aligned for you, and you aren't trying to do something to hurt other people or to hurt yourself. Yes. Something like that. You'd be surprised what gets manifested in your life. But it's a slinky. The universe is a slinky, and you can sit there and look at a slinky in your hand all day long till you push it. It ain't going to do nothing. But there is all the bound up potential energy in the universe in a slinky, and it'll slink forever if you keep doing your thing. But you got to keep moving it. You got to keep going. There can't be a stop to that. There's an ebb and a flow to your energy and to a way that you interact with the universe. And once you figure that out, it really is a beautiful relationship, Suzanne.
Yep. Pray and move your feet, my friend.
That's right. Well, before we let you go, we've got about 10 minutes left. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the show. What kind of things can people expect on site? Is it just a bunch of vendor booths? What kind of presentations can people look toward? What kind of workshops can people expect at this San Diego Transcendence Retreat?
Thank you for asking. Our event is all about the experience. It's about the show. It's about these presenters inspiring, empowering, and enlightening you. We have meditations on the beach. We have indoor workshops, but nothing takes place when the main presenter is on the main stage, because we want everyone to be present for these incredible speakers who have come to inspire you and to teach you. All of the presentations include practices, interactive practices, so that you can develop tools and techniques. And so this is being held at a tropical resort right on the beach of the bay, so that you are immersed in a 5D paradise the whole time that you're there. And so it kicks off with a sunset dinner cruise on Friday night. We board a big paddle wheel boat and we go out and cruise the bay at sunset. There's music, there's mingling. You get to meet the presenters. Guests get to meet each other and form friendships. There's a 3-course gourmet meal served. So, I create these retreats to be an experience. I curate the best possible experience from start to finish, so that it's truly memorable and life-changing. And that's how I choose the presenters as well. I meet each and every presenter before I pick them to present, because it's very important to me that regardless of how many followers this person has, I want to feel into their authenticity, to their sincerity. I want to make sure that this individual is coming as a humble servant, truly desiring to make a powerful and positive difference in the lives of our guests, because it's all about the guests, what they're going to learn, how this is going to change their life in a powerful and positive way, how it's going to continue to benefit their life afterwards, and how they're going to spread the love and the inspiration and empowerment as well, because we want to make a global difference.
Absolutely, and that's just it. You said a beautiful thing a second ago, where you don't care how many followers somebody has. It's about their presentation and their resonance and what they're saying. And that's just it. Whenever you're putting something like this on, because it can be a little rough. There tend to be a lot of the wash, rinse, repeat same presenters at a lot of these events. And it can be hard sometimes for new presenters, specifically new people with new ideas, new concepts, new people to come onto panels and challenge older ideas and paradigms and concepts of this. Because much like science, Suzanne, the whole idea of consciousness is we've got to exercise it. We've got to use it. We've got to poke, prod. We've got to thrust, parry, and block with each other. We've got to be willing to fence and spar with these concepts and ideas. And one of the most fascinating conferences that I've been to in the last 2 years was the 9/11 Justice Conference. And I'll tell you why. It wasn't just the data that was presented. It was the fact that they had a dissenting opinions panel, Suzanne, where researchers challenged each other on their research. Where it was like, earlier in your presentation, you said this. What about this? And it was a timed debate where it was like you had 3 minutes to respond to somebody. And that was it, to stop arguments, things like that. But it was an idea exchange. It was the idea of, my hypothesis isn't going to grow if nobody's challenging it. Like that's the whole point of science, is to sit around, sip a cup of coffee and challenge each other's thoughts. And it very much has to be the same way in this space. I think especially now with this conversation of consciousness, exoconsciousness, dimensional consciousness, it is massively, massively important for us to be willing to have those thought forms challenged, so that we can defend those thought forms. You know,
Yeah, we have lively guest panels, I can assure you. We have lively guest panels, and I always bring in at least a couple of people who are newer on the scene to give them the opportunity to come onto stage and share their thoughts. I bring in people of different age groups, from different cultures. You know, we're always trying to make the experience diverse with different perspectives through different lenses. And then, yes, we always have, you know, this guest panel, which has at times gotten, you know, very lively. And so we love it. Everybody's exploring different ideas.
Well, and that's just it. Passionate people say things passionately. You know, that's how I put it. And if you aren't passionate in that kind of way, if you don't have a fire in your belly, you should really be questioning what you're doing and why. You know, and that's where I'm at with it. Even whenever I have guests on, and it's one of those like, wow, yeah, if you can't talk for 45 minutes about what you do and why and your research, there's some issues here. You know, you should definitely be able to talk about your realm of research for 30 to 45 minutes with comfort. So,
and we get the audience involved too. Like, it's really important to have a very interactive. I know my friend Daryl Lanka channeling Bashar. He channels Bashar for 15, 20 minutes. The whole rest of his 90-minute presentation is calling people to the microphone.
Yeah.
So that they have an opportunity to share, to ask questions,
that's just
to get answers, you know, to share their perspective.
He is one that I have wanted to have on this show for a while, Suzanne, to discuss that relationship that he has with Bashar, because it's interesting to me, the channeling experience in that kind of way. Once again, as somebody who has experienced a connection in a different way like that, there is definitely a voice that I hear in that kind of way. Not a spoken voice, but it moves me, and I know when to pay attention when it calls my name. You know, so the idea of that is beautiful to me. And some of the messages that Daryl has given from Bashar are absolutely phenomenal. It's very, very interesting and moving anytime I guess the first time I saw him, or them rather, was Stairway to the Stars. That was the first time that I saw them in person. And it was
there.
Very interesting to see. And once again, the energy in the room is visceral when it goes on. So I want to thank you so much for your time tonight, for your open and candid conversation, because these things and these conversations, we should have you on again and again, because it really is truly important to where we are going as humanity, to where these topics are going as communities right now. I think events like yours, and especially grounded events in that kind of way, where you are truly trying to bring together the connection of people for the grand change of vibration of humanity. It is a beautiful and resonant thing, Suzanne. So thank you for what you're doing with not only San Diego Transcendence Retreat, but also Sedona Ascension Retreat and other things that you are putting together. So before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to get their tickets, where they can go to get involved, where they can go to find out more information about both of these amazing events.
Just visit San Diego Transcendence Retreat.com. We have an early bird special through midnight tomorrow night, July 1st, but we'll continue to run specials as well. I also invite you to the Sedona Ascension Retreat. We're just putting 2027 content together now, but that's SedonaAscensionRetreats.com. The theme will be Becoming the New Human, Embodying the Divinity Within. I invite you all to come and join the heart-centered, soul-inspired spiritual community in these gorgeous locations. They're power spots. You'll have a life-changing experience that will last a lifetime.
Well, Suzanne, thank you Thank you again for all that you are doing to facilitate these life-changing experiences. We've got to have you on again to talk about them, and I've got to try to make it out to this one. I
Yes,
wasn't
please
able to
do.
make it out.
Bashar will be there, yeah.
So I'll see what I can do about that. I'll get in touch with you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I'll be in touch with links, all that kind of great stuff.
Thank you. I so appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Love
Take
to
care.
all.
Godspeed in all you're doing and all that preparation. Feel free to go ahead and leave the Zoom meeting after we hop off screen, whatever. You can stay tuned online for the rest of the episode. So take care, Suzanne.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Man, always a great conversation, folks. And, as we were saying with Suzanne, the idea of changing yourself, changing your perspective, the moment that you can learn to kind of remove ego in that kind of way, where you can kind of learn to step aside, get out of your own way, like we were talking about in that Steve Jobs kind of way. It's amazing how the world opens up for you. So learning to resonate in that kind of way, learning to recognize those moments as they are coming is what's important. Much like anybody practicing karate, you aren't practicing to use karate. You're learning karate so that you can learn to react to the situation. And it's kind of the same thing. So stop on by, check things out. San Diego Transcendence Retreat.com is the website. When we come back from this quick commercial break, everybody, we will be joined by Alan Hops, the creator of the North American Cryptid Museum. We will be talking to him about his passion for horror, scaring, what it is to be a scare-a-preneur, somebody who literally figures out how people are frightened, what that means to the world of cryptozoology and to the legends that these creatures have, and what the importance is culturally of maintaining these stories and passing them on to the next generation. We'll talk about that and so much more with Alan Hops right after this, folks.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back from that quick commercial break. Thank you so much for staying with us. And also, thank you so much to our sponsors, especially True Hemp Science. If you're a user of CBD products like I am, stop on by TrueHempScience.com today. True Hemp Science and Christopher Lynch use a spigeric process where every part of the hemp plant is used. That is, every part. Seeds, stems, leaves, buds, roots. Every part is used, combusted, and reused, and that process followed time and time again until an amazing spigeric product results, complete with terpene profiles and all. Stop on by TrueHempScience.com today, folks. They are my choice for CBD products. I have been using Chris's stuff for at least the last 5-6 years, and it is absolutely awesome. I've traveled the country to dispensaries. It is by far the best stuff I've personally found. I use it all the time. Stop on by, check it out, see if it's for you. TrueHempScience.com is the website. Curious7 is the code that you want to use to save 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more and get 7% off or get 2 free edibles on the way out the door. In this segment, we are very pleased to bring for the first time Alan Hops. He is the founder of the North American Cryptid Museum. This literally just opened up in my backyard in Plano, Texas. I say backyard, like it's a big backyard here in Texas. But I am so excited for this amazing location. It's awesome. They just opened at the beginning of June. Welcome, Alan. How are you today?
I am awesome. Today is this is a Thursday, so the museum's open, but I have a long weekend ahead of me. I am knocking out some projects for haunted house and whatnot here at my home shop. So that's where I'm doing the broadcast from.
Well,
so
and
I'm almost off work, but not quite, you know.
I'm self-employed, so there is no off. Like I was taking phone calls to book people at clubs to run sound on my honeymoon. There's no off when you're self-employed. So, and speaking of that, like dark hour haunted house is really kind of the progenitor of all these things. How did you first get into the world of haunts and haunting, Alan? Because, man, like we were saying before the show, it has been a burgeoning industry over the last decade. It's been really cool to see so many, even as a live event technician, to see so many literal haunter-centric shows popping up where it's like trade shows, expos, that kind of stuff. It's awesome.
Well, yeah, I think that we're getting into almost like a new economy where events and live events are much more of a big driver than not quite digital media, but encroaching upon where, you know, where digital was, as far as, you know, what are people doing? And haunted attractions, I think, are remarkable in that sense. I've been a haunted house guy. I worked my first haunted house in 1986, and I haven't missed a year since. And I went full-time haunted house in 1995. And that's been my year-round occupation since then. Working at some year-round haunts in Orlando, Terror on Church Street, Skull Kingdom. I took a weird path to haunting. Most people have a love of Halloween and trick-or-treating and that, but I loved monsters. And that was my way into doing haunted houses. Is it let me be around monsters. It let me be a monster, you know, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. And, you know, that same time, I developed a love of cryptids. You know, you all hear about Bigfoot and Nessie as a kid, and, you know, and you hear about dinosaurs, and you get great disappointment. Well, there aren't any left. We're just telling you about them. You know, that's pretty upsetting. But then, you know, maybe there are some, you know, and you hear about Makolo and Mbembe, you know, you hear about all kinds of stuff. And I just, I love monsters, and I want to be, I lost you. I want to be more in that world as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that is why haunted houses for me. That is why Cryptid Museum.
And you know, once again, the tie between those things, especially now, of course, there is the famed Falk monster, things like that. You know, Legend of Boggy Creek. I've got an old reel of it that I got from our mutual friend Lyle Blackburn on my shelf right behind me. An actual can of 35 millimeter film from Legend of Boggy Creek. It is by far not a playable reel of film. Just so you know out there, if you're like, oh, I'm going to go break in and get Chris's film, it will deteriorate as soon as you start pulling it off that reel. But to say that I have an original reel of the Falk monster is pretty cool of that movie, because it's one that when I first saw it, it changed the way I looked at things, you know, and it really is, at least for what I know, for many Bigfoot fans, it was a huge foray for them into that world when they were a young kid. I know numerous people that when I told them they released the Legend of Boggy Creek soundtrack on vinyl, they went out and bought like 2-3 copies, because they were like, this is my playable one. This is the one I'm giving to my brother, and this is the one I'm just keeping, you know, because they're huge fans of that. And it's interesting to see that your love of monsters is what led to your career, led to where you're at now.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey. Having to navigate from, I want to be a year-round haunted house actor. Like that was my dream up until I moved. I was raised in Maryland, and I moved from Maryland in '95. 15 days after graduating high school, I moved to Orlando to work at those year-round haunted houses. And then I was there, and it's like, okay, I'm a year-round haunted. I have achieved my life's dream. What next? And then it's what business can I do, in the off season, but these haunts were year round, but what can I do to support other haunted houses and learning a skill set? And then through wanting to be a better monster in haunts, I started making masks and costumes. Because at that point in time, you couldn't see or breathe out of masks very well. They were meant to be worn for 20 minutes at a Halloween party, and that was it. And making my own mask, that led to, selling costumes, and then getting a little bit of business acumen in that way, and then managing haunted houses, and then owning my own, and, just traveling up that path. I have a pretty good, well-established haunted house now. I'll say it's, I'd probably put it in the top 50 of the country. Some might say higher, but, there's a lot of good ones out there.
I know numerous that would say way higher, Alan. Like I said, I have numerous friends that are highly involved in the haunter world, things like that. They love your place.
I have a lot of amazing people who work with me who are very passionate about what they do. And sometimes my job is to provide directions. Other time, my job is to stay out of their way and let them do cool stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and that cool stuff, especially, like you said, sometimes you even have to get out of your own way. And when you're talking about a project, especially something as in depth as the North American Cryptid Museum, that is an undertaking, and it's something kind of like, I'll compare it to Disclosure Day, man, because people have expectations. You know what I mean? And it gets really hard sometimes to meet those expectations, and much less if you're an artist and a lover of things like this yourself, your own expectations. So sometimes it can be like you can be your own worst critic and keep yourself from doing a project for years and years because you don't want to do yourself the disservice of not doing it right, Yeah,
there's a lot of paralysis by analysis in art.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer, though, finished is better than perfect. There's always going to be a way to make something better, but, get it done, give your effort and get that project finished. And I say that as we're talking about the Cryptid Museum, which is a project I think will never be truly finished, but I think it is fit for human consumption right now. It's that making the Cryptid Museum, it tied right into being a monster maker for haunted houses, in that my whole goal for it was to put you in the shoes of people who had the eyewitness accounts. Because every display is a full-size replica of what the eyewitnesses say they saw.
Wow.
And, I've been to several, Bigfoot museums because I'm a fan also, and they might have one or two Bigfoot statues. They might have plaster footprints, and they have all of the norm. I wanted to go in there and I wanted to see all these things. I wanted to see, how's the Alabama white fang different from, an old yellow top? How's the Falk monster different from the Michigan dog man? But there's so many cool cryptids out there, which are local stories and local culture.
Yep.
And they were seen for a reason, and a lot of times they reflect a moment in time, whether it's politically or it's, just what's going on in the world at the time. I think that those monsters of the moment need to be shared. And that's what the Cryptid Museum is for. And for you to go there and see, this is what Sinkhole Sam probably looked like based on eyewitness reports. This is what the lizard man at Escape or Swamp looked like based on reports,
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, you bring up a really interesting point that we talk about regularly whenever we just had Ken Gerhard on talking about cryptozoology. We just had Ryan Edwards on. And one of the things that we bring up regularly is that, hey, that cultural tie. Like I'm Cajun. We have the Rougarou, stuff like that, you know. And when you start looking at that, and when you start looking at things like the Dogman, even the Dogman here in Texas, the Dogman Triangle, when you start looking at the ethnicities that settled that triangle, you're looking at ethnicities that when they came over had stories of werewolves, you know, Germanic people, French people, stuff like that. So it's like their stories came right over with them. And that is a huge part of the culture. That's a huge part of what you want to preserve when you're doing a museum. Like what drove these stories to begin with?
I think that there's certainly not enough research and there's not enough known on genetic memory. But I think that plays a factor in what people see and what people are seeing. So my first foray into museums was I did a mythical monster museum, and we still do it at Scarborough Fair Renaissance Festival in Waxahachie, Texas.
Yeah.
And we've had that museum for 21 years now. But that was kind of my first foray. Well, while I was at the Renaissance Festival, you had to walk in the parade, you know, that happened every day. And my character was a monster hunter, and I had a leopard hide on my back. And I could not walk in the parade in front of the llama, or the llama would freak out. The llama had never seen a big cat. It had never seen a leopard, but it knew that pattern, and it knew that was bad news. And that really settled in my brain. Like I talked to the trainers and stuff. They were like, no way it's ever seen a big cat of any kind. So crazy that pattern makes him freak out. It's genetic memory. Yeah, no, precisely. And it's interesting to even get into that, because especially when you're talking about haunting and horror, that kind of stuff. That's something that I bring up regularly. Just a lot of our show here, Alan, is demystifying topics for people, and especially demystifying them to onboard people to the topic. You know, because sometimes these topics they're so thick, they're so rooted in tradition. They're kind of like when we had our guest on talking about tarot. Many people don't want to consider tarot cards because there's just way too much to get into, you know. And it's like, well, you don't necessarily have to go down that route of it. But how do you onboard people to the conversation to begin with? And when you're talking about especially things like haunts, horrors, that kind of stuff, when we talk to investigators, it's one of those, you should be preparing your gear, you should be preparing your map, but you shouldn't be diving down the rabbit hole of the stories of the location you're going to, because there's tons of stories about all these locations. And the problem is, at that point, you may be trying to prop up those stories and the legends with your data that you're collecting, as opposed to you, who is trying to faithfully replicate those stories and traditions so that those stories and traditions continue. So I have a complicated answer.
Please.
When someone says, do you believe in Bigfoot? My very short answer is yes.
Yeah. Same.
Because I don't want to live in a world without him.
Me too.
I want there to be a Bigfoot. So I believe in Bigfoot so that I can help him exist, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
And I'm not here to prove anything's existence. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here for the stories. Yeah. If three people with three different backgrounds stare into the same patch of dark forest and something moves, they each have a different thing in their mind as far as what that might be. You know, and even based off of what they see of it, it's dark. It's got hair. This background might think one thing, this background another. I just, that's fascinating. You know, it's not how our eyes use light to give shape to what's in front of us. It's not our eyes, though, that give shape to darkness. That's our imagination. And that is fed and built by our culture and our stories and what we've been exposed to in the past.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's one of those, I will respond with my typical rote phrase, Alan. Yes, I believe that there is a large hominid being known as Bigfoot that exists in the woods of North America and beyond. However, I also believe that there is something else that is fully willing to use the tropes in our mind and our want of experience as a point of ingress to this dimension. Now there's some horror for you. You know.
So, yeah. You want a crazy theory that I kind of developed while researching for the museum?
Absolutely.
I think that some of the first Bigfoot encounters were actually Homo sapiens or Cro-Magnon man coming into contact with Neanderthal. They existed at the same time. Neanderthal was a little on their way out, you know, and if you encountered one of them out in the forest, the mountains, you know, out in the snow, it's bigger than you, it's stockier than you, it's hairier than you. They know from fossil record that Neanderthal ate other hominids. You know, that's a little terrifying because they find, you know, the cut marks on bone and whatnot. But I honestly think because of that, and going back to genetic memory, we're kind of wired to see Bigfoot out there in the darkness. We're wired to see things that might, just because technology has removed us from the feeding pool, you know, just because it removed us from the food chain, doesn't mean our brains have caught up fast enough. So, you know, the stories that we tell all the time, we tell stories about monsters in order to keep kids safe. Because if there's a monster in that lake, the kids might not go in it. You know, they might not be there at dusk. Yeah. Because, you know, a monster is going to get them, you know, but then they don't drown because they weren't there at dusk.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. And it's interesting because, many of our teachings come from those common sense things like that, where you're just trying to keep somebody out of trouble. And if it takes some fable about what's existing out in the darkness to keep them from it, like don't follow the whistles, you know, things like that. You know, because if you're interested, you may just keep going. And it's very easy to find yourself lost is the easiest way to put it, in the middle of the night in the woods. But that even the concept of, like you said, coming up with a hypothesis while you were researching this, that's honestly some of the coolest stuff that I love about doing deep dive research on projects like this.
There's a few of these that in making the exhibit and in researching the creature, if the people then had just had the internet, we would not have that cryptid.
Let's get into that real quick, please.
The Beast of Bladenboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
So reading those descriptions and then, you know, doing a little bit of research of overlap of area and terrain, I'm pretty sure the Beast of Bladenboro was a fisher cat. Fisher cats are pretty rare, and they were very rare in that area. And that was one where it was sighted, Bladenboro area. It is like a tip of its range. So it's not there all the time. And it's, you know, it's certainly not a raccoon. It's not a possum. You know, it's not a coyote. And they get to be pretty good sized. Yeah. And they fit the size range of the original reports, not down the road where this, it was about 3 feet, you know, that becomes 6 feet over time and telling, you know?
Yep.
And so I'm pretty sure that the Beast of Bladenboro was a fisher cat. And that really clicked as I was doing the research and figuring it out. There's also La Lechuza in Texas.
Yep.
The owl woman who was a witch who can turn into an owl. Well, where that was first reported and commonly reported is about 200 miles north of the tip of the range of a large owl called the Stygian owl. And I don't know if you're able to look up the Stygian owl.
Oh yeah, I'll look it up right quick. Here's some images of La Lechuza, folks, just so you're aware. But yeah, let me check out the Stygian owl real quick.
And the Stygian owl looks terrifying. And you see an owl that is 2.5, 3 feet tall, that you've never seen before, because it's at the very tip of its range, and you know all the animals in the area because you're outside every day. And then this new one comes, and it's scary looking, and it's it has a presence. I can easily see that
the
becoming.
Red eyes.
Oh yeah. There's a couple pictures that are just terrifying.
Well,
of it.
And it's interesting because I shared a story on air. I guess it was time before last that Ken Gerhard was on, where I grew up in Houston, West Houston, and I'd seen owls, I'd seen that kind of stuff. But now that you bring up the Stygian owl, I'd never considered it. This happened like at night, like 10, 11 o'clock at night. I was driving down a familiar stretch of road, back neighborhood in Houston, and I thought that it was something on top. There was something on top of the fire hydrant. And as I got closer, it turned and looked. And that's how I knew it was an owl immediately, because its head like 180'd and looked at me. And yeah, it was red eyes like that. And that thing, it was literally the size of that fire hydrant.
Yeah.
Like before it spread its wings, which were easily as wide, if not wider, than my car when it flew over me. It was huge. It was a massive owl.
Stygian owl. That's well north of its normal range, but who knows what was happening in its normal range? Was there a fire or a drought that pushed it a little bit? But yeah, the Stygian owl is one that I'm pretty sure that's responsible for a lot of La Lechuza sightings.
Interesting. And that's just it. One of the things that we discuss regularly is, I work with a lot of people like MUFON, stuff like that, Alan. And I regularly talk about the difference between data and evidence whenever you're investigating things. And the one thing that I always say is, more red circles. I'm all about the red circles, but we have to understand that most of what's in those red circles we can explain. As a 20-year AV tech who recovered footage and transferred footage, I've seen a lot of things. I can explain a lot of stuff with 30 years behind the lens and a microphone. On occasion, when we explain those, people have a very hard time accepting that. And I think some of that is because they believe it removes their experience, when it doesn't. That moment, even the moment where I saw the owl, even that 2-3 second window while I was driving where I was like, what the heck is that? That's a moment of question. That's literally the beginning of the scientific process. So it doesn't, just because what you've seen has been proven, doesn't remove the moment of experience. It doesn't remove the moment where you saw something, you had a question, you started looking for more data, and that's a huge thing, because otherwise, even artists can lose their passion in that kind of route.
And you can, answering questions often leads to more questions.
Yeah.
That's especially in, cryptozoology. And it's like, okay, so you have found a solution for half of these reports. There's still the other half, there's still the other half. And it's almost like when there's a famous person, I remember this very clearly growing up, where I saw on TV, and it was Boy George. I'm like, I've never heard of Boy George. Well, didn't I hear about Boy George, for the next, 2 years?
Yeah.
He would pop up on the radio or the news or whatever every now and then. And, but it's when you first become aware of something, your senses get a little more attuned to it. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
No.
But
but also does it mean that you just discovered. It was probably there for a while before you got attuned to whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And the example I'll give on that, we covered pretty in depth this last year, the New Jersey drone flap.
Yeah.
Where suddenly, right after we had the UFO hearing, where they said, why aren't we having a larger conversation to Lou Elizondo? They were like, why aren't we having a larger conversation about these objects over locations? He was like, well, because it would basically announce the fact that we have a large gaping hole in our observation platforms in sensitive areas. And then suddenly, lo and behold, what happens? Drones all around sensitive areas, everywhere. And then suddenly, everybody's reporting drones all over the country. And it's like, they aren't new. You're just looking for them now. That's all. They like 90% of those drones in the sky were not new drones. Like, I live in Austin, man. They've been testing drones in our sky for 5 years to deliver pizza to you, man. All right. Like, they are everywhere. They're ubiquitous. And some of them for delivery are like half the size of a Mini Cooper. They're big. They're big.
Yeah, we have swarms of drones over every Walmart now.
Yeah, exactly.
And the scary part to me about that is I don't want to get used to drones. If I get used to drones and my brain starts writing them off, then I won't be aware of the ones that I should be aware of. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's just it. You don't want to get to a point where you're no longer critically thinking, Alan.
If like I live in Texas, obviously. I live an hour away from my work. And I have, routes that I drive. Could I tell you where all the water towers are? No. But if I have, a 5 or 10-year-old in the car, they'll point every single one out to me because, they're more attuned to seeing that. I'm watching the road and, there's just I think attunement is huge as far as what's seen and what your mind records.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the things we talk about regularly on this show is the fact that we roll through, especially if you're somebody that commutes, Alan, you roll through a good third of your day in a state of rote hypnosis. Yeah. Once you are like upright in the world and going, like your brain is pretty autonomous. You don't think like, hey, legs, take me to the fridge for coffee, for a soda. Like once you know how to walk and you're ambulatory, you just go. Your brain automatically does it. You don't think about it. You don't think about breathing. If you're driving to work for 20, 30 minutes in traffic, you likely at least a good 3-4 days a week go like, oh, there's my exit. Because you've got your blinders on. You're just going to your day, I'm
a sculptor and I teach sculpting. We do classes called Monster Camp where people come and they spend 3 days with us and they learn how to make a latex mask and they leave Sunday with a mask that they sculpted and molded and painted. And it's a magic process. But through that, I realized our brains are really bad at holding on to information.
Yes.
And the use of visual reference in order to make sure that facial details are right and your anatomy is right is so important because our brains are just not meant to hold that information. So what's remarkable about cryptid sightings is I think that it's a moment that is so shocking to your brain that it bothers to record everything.
Yeah.
You can probably remember what the smell in your car was when you saw that owl, because your brain said, this is an important moment. We have to take all these notes and write all this down. Yeah. And it's stored in your brain. Most of your life isn't like that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the joys of what I do is you can spend, nights at home on the couch watching, horror movies or regular movies, and you might watch some really good movies and you might remember the movie, but you won't really remember that night, and then there's a whole string of nights that are just kind of blurry. But if you go out to a haunted house, you go out to an event, you go out to a cryptid museum, you're going to make moments that you'll remember forever. And I think that is one of my favorite things that I do.
You know, I can fully appreciate that, man. I grew up in theater in junior high and high school. That's how I came to honestly, my industry I came to because I wanted to be Tom Savini. The day I found out who did the makeup and Creep Show, I found the Tom Savini creature book at Walden Books, and man, that thing was like my Bible. I read and read and read, and I wanted to be a special effects artist. So I got into theater and learned theater makeup. I was probably one of the only guys I knew that was into theater makeup. And that's what took me into the world of set design and lighting and made me become an audio engineer and eventually a video engineer. And yeah, I explain to people all the time, the reason I love my live events industry is because it reminds me of theater. We spent 3 months building sets for a week and a half a show and then put it all into a pile and burned it because we can't store it all, you know? And that is just such a beautiful and cathartic experience that like you put all of this energy into it for these people to enjoy it and have this one night of experience and then it's all gone. And even whenever I build corporate events, it's like to see people's faces when they walk into a show floor for the first time or a general session and they're like gobsmacked by the room. That's just a general ballroom any other day, like it had a wedding in it yesterday, you know? But it's a totally different and transformed space, and it takes people there. It moves them in a different way, and it's very interesting how our environment does that to us. And like you said, how experience specifically ingrains that environment in us.
And I think that cryptids and cryptozoology and the paranormal, they're all rising right now, I think, in popularity.
Yeah.
Simply because right now you can't trust anything. You can't trust a video you see on the internet.
Yep.
You can't trust an email that you get. You can't trust a phone call, even though it's a trusted voice.
Yeah.
All of that is compromised. The only thing that isn't compromised are your experiences. And for people to be able to see something and it strikes a nerve in them, and maybe it's a nerve of fear, maybe it's just a nerve of wonder, but it makes them think, it makes them feel. And with all of the digital media that we have, right now, you can watch anything that you want to watch that's ever been made pretty much within an hour of poking around on the internet. And I almost think visually, mentally, and do you play video games?
I've gotten back into it a little bit because of my 9-year-old kid.
Okay, I was
a big video game player, and I was a huge Magic the Gathering player.
I don't play many, but here's something that I have realized. As soon as you're pretty high up in the game, you've been playing it for a while, and then you put in the cheat code for God mode, you probably won't play that game after about 2 weeks because the challenge is gone. The fun is gone. And I think that we're approaching that point with visual media, stimulus and movies. Like it's all out here. I can get anything I want anytime. Now I need to go in the woods and look for something that I think is real. Yeah. I think that's where we're headed, at least metaphorically in many ways.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that part of psychology up, man, because I'm afraid of heights. Like I'm regularly in a lift, all kinds of stuff, man. You get me on a 10, 12-foot ladder, I'm cool. You get me past 16 feet with that same stuff, I'm sweating under my shirt now. I'll still get my job done, but there's a part of it inside of me that is fluttery and butterfly. And it's very interesting the way that we chase that. It's very interesting the way that we get comfortable with that. And the prime example, like I said, my son's 9. He just went on his first roller coaster. Very mixed reviews from him, Alan. And I think some of that was because dad wasn't with him, mom was. Mom is not really a roller coaster person, all right? She's totally a ride person. She's all about it. She's all about an experience like the Cryptid Museum. walk through, get into it, immerse yourself, being a theater person herself. But it's interesting to see, how somebody reacts to that situation because of somebody next to them, and how the person next to them affects them. But also how once you have that thrill, you can frequently keep chasing that thrill. Like gore movies are some of my favorite in the world, man. Like I said, I was a huge Tom Savini fan. I love a good horror movie, a good gory horror movie. And I can't wait till I can share them with my son. But to see him watch Poltergeist for the first time this last year when he was 8, and see him fall in love with it to the point of 3-4 times a week. I mean, it was like a new Toy Story for him, dude. He was like, can we watch Poltergeist again? Can we watch Poltergeist again? Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting to see how there is something so scary. I know grown-ups that won't watch Poltergeist, man. And it's a PG movie. It's not even PG-13. It's PG.
I think there's something that happens in our brains. All right. And remember, I'm a haunted house guy.
Absolutely.
I've been studying how to scare people and what scares people for a long time. Because it's my job.
Yeah.
And I think that technology has evolved a lot faster than our brains have. Like that's clear.
Yeah.
But we used to, like us, our build, okay, our make and model of human being was alive in a time where we would sit in a family unit outside of a cave around a fire, thousands of years ago, and something might come out of the darkness, grab one of us, drag them back into the dark, and we would hear them being eaten.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the stress that our brains were under, of course, getting food and all that. Yes, all kinds of stress. We look at a deer or a squirrel and we think about how stressed out it is all the time because it's always on edge because something might come to get it.
Yeah.
Well, we're supposed to have things coming to get us, but we have made the world a little too safe. So now we have all that anxiety still. We have the same anxiety of a deer because
it's literally the source of anxiety. Like as somebody who went to a panic doctor a year or so ago, Alan, like that is literally the source of every bit of it.
And so we still have it, but now we get upset over things that don't make much sense. Will I make mortgage? Will I have enough money to send my kids to college? Will I get fired from my job? Traffic, is a big point of rage and issue. And, it's people don't come to a haunted house, in my opinion, to get scared. They're already scared.
Yeah.
They're already anxious. But they get there and it's a release valve for some of that tension and pressure inside of them. When you scare someone in a haunt, you scare them, they scream, they run 3 steps and they laugh.
Yeah.
Because that's that pressure being released of that anxiety that, you got to come every now and then and get that out of you. Yeah. Whether it's a roller coaster or a horror movie, you have to kind of release that tension a bit. And there were a lot of studies right after COVID and lockdown where people who appreciated horror movies did much better psychologically than people who didn't, because they were already a little bit prepared for the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Because they've been watching it in movies over and over again.
Yeah. Like, well, it ain't going to be zombies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
no, I'm out of toilet paper. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fascinating to think about it that way, Alan, because I've never, and like I said, I've known a few people that have owned haunted houses, stuff like that. I've never heard somebody use that approach. The fact that they're already scared. I don't need to scare them.
So here's something crazy, right? It's harder to scare somebody when it's raining. So think about if you're walking inside a building or outside and one drop of water hits you. Oh, what was that? But people don't go when it's raining and lots of drops of water are hitting them. They turn on some defenses.
Oh,
they turn on some shields, basically.
Yeah. So there's the point of expectation outside, if I may get wet anyway.
But I may get touched. I may be affected by the environment. And they turn on these shields to make sure that they're not being overloaded by that shiver of one drop of water times, 10,000 with raindrops. And then they come into the haunted house and those shields are still up. And it takes a while for you to get those shields down to get a good scare on them.
That is fascinating to think about. And once again, even just the psychology of how we approach these situations to begin with. And just to bring this back to the world of cryptozoology in the last few minutes, man, it's something that you really do. It's no different than hunting at night or something like that. There is a different, you're on point in a different way when you're in a blind early morning, early dusk, that kind of stuff than when you're out there in the middle of the day. And
well, I'm a pretty brave guy. I wouldn't scuba dive at night. No, thank you. No, thank you.
No, absolutely not. That's one of those places where you're still fully on menu.
Yes. Much more
like
so than anywhere else.
And uncontrollably on menu. There's real things out in the darkness of the water because we still ain't explored like 90% of that place,
And they keep discovering weirder and bigger things.
Absolutely. And that's just it. When you're talking about things like the Cryptid Museum, these are things that people have experienced and that have had storied histories across North America for years and have quite literally, much like a UFO UAP experience, Alan, or even an experience of para, have truly changed people's lives, have changed the way that they believe, have changed the way that they look at the literal fabric of reality around them.
It's when your brain has to expand in order to fit in something that you didn't think should fit.
Yeah.
It leaves a little rupture, because you have to break it open a bit to say, okay, this is knowledge that I was not prepared for. I had smoothed over my sum of knowledge, and now I have to crack it open and fit something else there that I was not ready for. And I those leave such a mark on the person. And then that mark is so strong that they tell others, and other people, have an experience based off of just the telling. I'll tell you something that when you mentioned paranormal, and I'm not a huge paranormal guy, but I have a lot of ghosts in my employ, so I don't necessarily worry about the ones that are not in my employ.
Right. They are not your insurance problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if someone tells me a ghost story or an encounter story and the hair on the back of my neck raises up, my brain says, okay, that's a real encounter. Like, that happened. And there are times when it doesn't. And I'm like, I don't think I believe them. So, and what's funny is that feeling hasn't gone away in hearing hundreds of stories, thousands of stories. I'm in a business where I hear about that kind of stuff a lot.
Yeah.
One of the most awesome things about the Cryptid Museum, let me tell you this.
Please.
People come and they want to tell me what happened to them.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
I had a woman who was very passionately telling me about her Thunderbird sighting.
Oh, wow.
Which was near Italy, Texas. And passionately telling me she did not speak English and I did not speak Spanish, but she was very passionately telling me, and someone was trying to translate. And she was very clear. It didn't look like the one you have. It didn't look like that. Its head was different. Its head was, and was more. And she pointed to, we have a Jersey Devil. She said, the head was more like that.
Oh,
and so it was just fascinating. But I've gotten Bigfoot stories. I've gotten Dogman stories. It is so wonderful that here's the dichotomy of it, right? I have made a place where if you walk in at night and the lights are down low, it's literally full of monsters.
It's going to freak you out a little bit.
So it's a scary place. But if you have seen something, it automatically flips and becomes a safe space to tell other people about the thing that you saw.
Exactly.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's beyond wonderful, man. And that's just it. Like, the idea of, yes, creating that safe space for conversation is hugely important. And honestly, how you know you're successful as an artist is people are talking. Doesn't really matter how they're talking. If what you did spurred conversation, positive, negative, I like it, I don't like it, you are successful as an artist. That's like, you know.
I just sculpted something that's going to be for the Cryptid Museum.
Cool.
The Mini Wasitu, which is from North Dakota. It is a half man, half buffalo with one eye. Very much an indigenous person's creature, but it's also a cryptid that is claimed to be seen every now and then. And I kind of feel that this thing looks ridiculous. Like this isn't something I would pick to make, but I'm making it because it's representing an area, a time, a culture, a thought, you know?
Yeah.
And I want that in this Cryptid Museum, which is thought and culture salad of all these different pieces together. It's been mentioned enough. It deserves to be there.
Well, and that brings up a huge point, which is, you know, what makes the cut, Alan? Because once again, like we've had, and I'll honestly have to hook you guys up. There is a guy, I'm trying to remember his name offhand, and it kills me inside that I can't. But he is actively a cartographer in Kentucky and has drawn an entire map of the U.S. with haunted locations, UFO sightings, every sighting location of cryptids, stuff like that. It is just this huge, actual, like fold out, like what you had in junior high geography of the United States size map, with a legend and all kinds of stuff. But when you start getting into it, there is tons in every state. So what makes the cut?
All right. So alongside what makes the cut, the biggest challenge of the museum, I wanted to have something for every state because I'm US based and North America, US is a big chunk of North America.
Yeah.
We have Canadian, we have Mexican also. We we're Puerto Rico, all over. But I wanted a cryptid for every state. The hard part was not allowing every state's cryptid to be Bigfoot, because there are so many regional variants and versions of Bigfoot. Whether it's it's Big Money, Old Yellow Top, Ohio Grassman, Florida Skunk Ape.
Yep.
They're every state. Wood boogers, the gray ones. There are so many different versions that are basically all Bigfoot, or specific Bigfoot entities. That was the hard part. It's okay. I'm doing 50 states. I'm only going to allow 8 Bigfoot type creatures. So who are the most prominent,
Yeah. Yeah.
And who gets Bigfoot, right?
Yep.
That was a big question. It probably would have been California. It's got to be Cal, right? California, Oregon, Washington. It's got to be one of them. And luckily, California, Fresno Nightcrawler is pretty popular, and that won out for California's first round.
Okay.
Now we keep adding. We're adding and adding and adding.
I'll bet.
Between our first weekend and the second weekend, we actually added the Bear Lake monster from Idaho.
Oh wow!
So we keep adding. Yeah.
Wow. And yeah, Jeff Craig was the gentleman I was just thinking of.
Okay. I'm going to make a note of that.
Craig Cartography. Here it is, folks, just so you know, like literally, like you can see part of his map for Ohio right there.
Maps?
Oh, absolutely. Like you can find, you can
a wonderful gift shop.
You definitely need to hook up with it because like he has his stuff at half price books, stuff like that. Okay. So I will definitely like handshake you two guys in a Facebook message, man, because I am all about artists working with artists and helping artists in that kind of way. How was his last name again? Craig, Craig. Okay. Jeff Craig is his name. And I want to say he runs the Loveland Frogman Festival, if I'm not mistaken. I know he runs one of them anyway. Because there was a kerfuffle a couple years ago about the name of the festival, which there always is with stuff. But it's fascinating when you get into these things because once again, every single state has a huge and rich history of sightings like this, and it's fascinating to see what the crossovers are between states, what things go from location to location, which ones are locked down regionally like that. Like there's really nothing else in the country that looks like or resembles the Jersey Devil.
Yes. Well, and even from the origins of the Jersey Devil, that's one where very rarely do you have a cryptid supernatural crossover where there's a cursed child that, that flew out, that, leads. Yeah. It's, that one is so unique on its origin story, as well as its manifestations. Jersey Devil, while I have a physical representation in the Cryptid Museum, it leans a little more towards the paranormal in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because of its origin and often its manifestation.
And I would say the same thing myself about Mothman in that kind of way. Where at least...
now,
go ahead.
Mothman is so weird. There's an evolution that some cryptids have, right? Mothman right now is mostly represented by lovely squishable stuffed animal pillows that are black.
Yeah.
Right? That's what a Mothman is right now to the large modern audience.
Yeah.
And Mothman has been a kind of alien looking, all black, red eyes for a long time, since a newspaper reporter called it the Mothman. It was described as a bird with like a 50-foot wingspan in some of the first reports.
Yep.
And so those very early reports morphed into what we have today. What's as important as what makes the cut is when makes the cut.
Yes. Yes.
When do I decide to represent this cryptid? Because if I had done Mothman as a 5-foot tall bird with a 50-foot wingspan, like was first reported, that would be really weird. Now Mothman is all black and definitely has these big feathered wings, but that has changed through time. Yep. Obviously in the statue, he's represented as almost butterfly wings. Sometimes he looks a little more mothy, sometimes antenna, sometimes no. Often he's said to have no head protrusion whatsoever. It's just around, shoulders and head's kind of set in the chest. So, and there's a couple images there that have that. If you look at the Wendigo, and how the Wendigo has changed over time from what it was.
It has, yeah, no, and that's one that we bring up all the time with Ryan Edwards is the idea that, and we just talked about it with King Gerhard and Celine. That's one that when you look at its actual history, that is a full-on spirit. Like that is a possessing spirit that takes over people. It's not a deer-headed creature with antlers and a human, like none of that is within the historic record. All of that is like creepypasta stuff and things like that.
Well, so that's even new. And then there was the Victorian horror slop novels,
yes.
Those wanted to tell Wendigo stories. So they had to give it a form. And they made it as like some kind of a snow hairy monster. and kind of merge it with the abominable snowman. And that's how you got the Wendigo that Marvel Universe has.
Yeah.
Who was one of my favorite characters as a kid.
Same.
You know?
From Alpha Force.
But he has nothing to do at all with the Wendigo from the indigenous people, Native Americans.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And here's like even a small representation of Mothman these days, you know, where it's much more gargoyle-like almost in its way. So yeah, it's interesting.
I have to figure out what from each area, and then I have to figure out when I'm getting heat, because right now the Wendigo that I have in the Cryptid Museum is a big deer skull deer antler, because if 10,000 people see it, 9,800 will say that's a Wendigo, and the other 2 will say no, it's not.
Yeah.
The other 200 will say no, it's not.
Yeah.
And I want to build the museum for those 200, but I also need the other 9,000 to pay my electric bill. You know?
Absolutely. And Lord knows you can't infringe on IP and use your favorite Wendigo from the Marvel Universe.
But it's a chance to say, you know, this is what this looks like now.
Yeah.
You can talk about a Wachuga, which is a similar entity, but different from the Wendigo. Because I'm in a haunted house and I have a haunted house background, I try to not go too gruesome or scary. Yeah. So I don't go too far into Wendigo psychosis and case studies of that. But what a change over time the Wendigo has done.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a huge change, and once again to the point where the original history of it is almost lost in pop culture. You know,
and then there's new ones.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Chupacabra is only from '82, but there's a whole new type of cryptid called crawlers.
Yeah, the pale crawlers.
And there's a canyon crawler. We have one of those, and normally they are crawling on all fours. Ours is standing up because the museum has some space limitations. And so crawlers have gotten mixed up because they have a similar look as the rake, which was creepypasta and was just made up online. There are a lot of crawler sightings, though. They're real big on like thermal cameras. There's a lot of thermals of crawlers. Crawlers to me are pretty scary as far as the cryptids go, like which ones are scarier than others. Really unnatural. But there's also some sightings that have gone on for a length of time. You know, if you're watching something for 40 seconds, that's a lot of time to take in detail.
That's an elapsed time for a sighting, you know.
And there was a Casper Mountain crawler. That's a specific sighting on Casper Mountain where he was up kind of on a cliff, and this thing is trying to get up to him. And it was about a 40-second sighting before he was able to get fully clear and not have to see this thing anymore.
Wow.
And, you know, I thought that was really remarkable. So that's also been mixed up, though, with in D&D, there's creatures called changelings who can change their appearance.
Yep.
They are that in the D&D monster manual, they're skinny and gray, and they have, hey, that's me.
Yeah.
They're skinny and gray, and they have big eyes like that, and they look a little bit like a gray alien. But they also look a little bit like a rake, and they can change. So now a lot of people are saying that the crawlers, they call them skinwalkers.
Yeah. Which is,
and that's a different thing. Right now, we're in the time of the mashup. You know?
It's fascinating to see that because the skinwalker is something very, very, very specific that once again is getting mixed up in a lot of other culture, a lot of other paraculture in a way that it has traditionally never traditionally you wouldn't even speak the name. You wouldn't even say the name. You wouldn't even much less Naldulshi, or I think it's something like that. Don't quote me, folks, please.
And but it's, I feel like, you know how when you're a kid and you're studying mythology and it's like, wait a minute, the Roman gods are just the Greek gods, but with different names.
Yeah.
They're the same thing, but they have different names. We're in that time where everything is getting mashed together.
Yes.
And it's remarkable, but it's also frustrating. Some people see culture being lost. One of the things that I want to do is I want to tell stories from other cultures, and you have to be very careful when you're doing that.
You do.
But I don't want the world needs more monsters, not less.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For me, the main thing that I love about horror, sci-fi, speculative fiction, things like that, it is the most beautiful world of imagination that you can ever have, Alan. And our imagination is what makes us unique. Our imagination is what allows us to do what we do as humanity. And if we don't keep that alive, if we don't keep that moving in some kind of way, we get very tied into things, and once again, that anxiety takes over.
You're never going to grow unless you're uncomfortable.
Yes,
like that's truth. So you should be hearing stories and hearing about creatures that make you uncomfortable. That's where your growth comes from. That's where your culture gets enriched by those periods of discomfort. That's what makes, a people or a culture strong. And having stories from that time and having creatures that represent those mental struggles and times.
Yeah.
Vastly important. But also on the other end of that spectrum, I'm uncomfortable living in a world where human beings are the worst thing in it. I'm just not, I don't want that.
Yeah.
That would be terrible. So I keep looking for monsters to find things that are better, that are worse than us.
And only hope, Alan.
It's pretty difficult, by the way.
It ain't easy.
We continue to reach new heights.
Yes, we do. I want to thank you so much for your time today, man. I want to thank you for your open, candid conversation. Truly. I want to have you on again and again, because things like this, I say regularly, the reason why I love people like you who are passing on tradition, passing on oral histories, passing these things on. This is how culture moves. This is how culture has stayed alive for millennia. The Library of Alexandria was lost, man, but the stories of it stayed around, So like, we've got to keep the story makers. We've got to keep people like you around. We have to keep people that keep these local traditions, that keep these localized stories, and even the ones that make new ones. Those are precious commodities to humanity. So thank you for all that you were doing with the North American Cryptid Museum, and it truly is, I think something that needs to be heralded, and hopefully, hopefully schools can start to see that in that kind of way where, go ahead.
I had a moment in the Cryptid Museum. It was last week at some point. We've only been open for 2 full weeks.
Mm-hmm.
This is our 3rd week going now, but where there was a full family, little kids, parents, grandparents, and the grandmother said, I saw Bigfoot once. And the kids looked and were like, what? And then the grandkids were like, what? And then she told this story of how, they were looking out their window they were at a friend's house, and it walked out of the trees and back into the trees. And they don't go to that friend's house anymore. And it was very scary,
Wow.
They were looking at it from inside, looking out.
Yeah.
But my Bigfoot statue is what pulled that story out of that woman.
Who had probably never told anybody outside of that vehicle or her friend's house.
It wasn't appropriate anywhere else.
Yeah.
Here it's appropriate. And, that's
beautiful.
That's a cooler grandma in my book, just because.
Hell yeah. That's rock and roll grandma, dude.
Yeah.
But literally, like within your first weekend to have that experience, man, like that is truly so beautiful as a creator, that like your creation moved that moment. That's amazing.
Open
That's
invite.
amazing.
You got to come up and see us at some point. We're not too far.
I guarantee you, I will be doing that again and again and again and again, and be bringing tons of people. Most of my friends from college, things like that, live. I went to college in Irving at University of Dallas, so just right up the road from you. So we're up there a few times a year. We will definitely be making it out there, because I am all about stuff like this. I come from a family of educators. Things like this are near and dear to my heart, because it is what spurs people into industries. It is what spurs people into the world of creation, Alan, and into the world of literally being open-hearted, open-minded. And you'll hear it at the end of the show here in just a second. So thank you for facilitating that, for making that a mission in your life. It's absolutely beautiful. Let everybody know where they can go to get their tickets, where they can go to find out more, where they can go to get involved.
So North American Cryptid Museum, that's been up on the screen. That's the website for the attraction. Tickets are there. Tickets are only $13 after tax. It's, right around 16, something like that. But yeah, we're open every Thursday through Sunday, 11 to 7. Tickets will be launching this week at some point. We're doing a very special, we do an event called Cryptids and Cocktails.
Love it.
And we're doing one in July during Shark Week on Terrors of the Deep, where myself and another presenter, now there's only, which one is that?
This is, hold on.
Oh, now, okay.
That's
So
March
that was
14th.
the one for March. Yeah, like I said, the new one's going to be up soon.
Okay.
But it's a lecture series. So,
cool.
Me or another industry person, lover of stories, will talk for an hour. And there's dinners provided and some drinks, and that's a good time. We're doing one in, I think, the end of July. Not sure about that time, but I think so. Okay. With Lyle. And,
fantastic.
We're gonna talk about the Lake Worth monster and some other things.
Oh, cool.
Because I'll have a new little wing open of the museum that I'm working on now.
Fantastic, man. I am so excited about this. Like, I've literally got goosebumps, because this is just great to be right in our backyard, right here in Texas, and to be covering something so comprehensive. Is a huge undertaking. So thank you for taking it on once again, Alan. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm enjoying the heck out of it. And this is something where I wanted to do it. And it's something that 8 to 10-year-old Alan would have really loved. So, that's why I'm doing it. But to see opening weekend when so many people came and enjoyed it and had a good time and marveled at the exhibits, really, in a way, validating of my weirdness,
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you for having me on and for being willing to talk about this weird stuff all the time.
Hey, you are welcome on this show anytime. I am all about giving people like you platform to be able to get information out there, to be able to let communities know stuff like that. So whatever Curious Research and Curious Realm can do to help you, you just let me know, man. We are there for you, all right?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hold the line real quick while we close things out with the audience, folks. While you are online getting your tickets to the North American Cryptid Museum right there in Plano, Texas, folks, stop on by. Also, Dark Hour Haunted House right there in the same location. They have some fantastic events, some great stuff going on, and always a great, horribly scary time. Also, while you're online getting your tickets for that, stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can like, follow, subscribe. That is where you can find the YouTube channels of all of our guests right there on CuriousRealm.com/video. That way you can like and follow and subscribe and support them as well. And you can also get your copy of the Field Observation and Encounter Log. If you are an investigator in the world of cryptozoology, UFO, UAP field research, if you are out taking, encounter testimonies, things like that, the field observation and encounter log is your back pocket log to put all of your data from the field down in a scientific way so that your data is ready to shake hands with science come the day that you need to do so. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Thank you so much for your open hearts, your open minds. That is what makes the conversation. And without the conversation, humanity does not march forward. So remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. To download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault, or become a sponsor of Curious Realm, visit our website at curiousrealm.com. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast and video services, curiousrealm.com, as well as KGRA Radio, APR TV, and the official Curious Realm app for Roku devices. Curious Realm is a proud member of the Ground Zero Media family of podcasts. For more shows and members-only content, visit groundzeroplus.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious, and remember, the other side is always watching.